Welcome to this video, which is a part of a series of videos related to an action plan to avoid extinction and for us to thrive as humans. Action plan, existence, threat, solutions, summary. Here follow the chapters. The components of this video and action plan are health crisis, being the main component in focus in this series of videos and ebooks, but also biodiversity and its extinction that happens simultaneously with our health crisis. Climate change, but we will also speak about climate destruction that began already in our deep past. The climate destruction began 4,000 years ago or earlier. We are not aware of it. Bacterial infection should be our priority because it's our biggest threat. We need to focus on bacterial infections and diseases because bacterial infections like plague are re-emerging. Several health organizations and scientists are warning for the re-emerging of plague for years. Bacterial infections are absolute threats, like fungi are. I consider virus infections a relative threat because a virus needs the host alive and healthy, and the bacteria does not need the host to be alive and healthy. Especially for fungi, it's favorable for them if the host is dead or ill, with very limited immunity. Virus infections have potential as primers against absolute threats, which we are doing here. Bacterial infections are absolute threats. So viruses have something that bacteria don't have. They have a potential as primers. They have a potential as killers of bacteria. And bacterial infections are a far greater threat also because our immunity against them is vanishing, because we have less contact than we ever had before. Bacterial infections are most resistant. For instance, plague is extremely resistant, like most other gram-negative bacteria. Bacterial infections cause antimicrobial resistance by presenting a positive feedback or a vicious cycle. So now to the solutions. Enriched agroforest is priority as a solution because, to put it simply, it will solve everything, all our threats, on its own, at least partially. We further need to focus on agroforests because agroforests increase immunity because the food, fruits, etc. that they produce are like probiotics for us, directly and indirectly. Enriched agroforest is important because it increases immunity because of the produced staple crops, foods, fruits, are more energy dense, more nutrient rich, probiotic, and contain no or less toxins than any other production environment. Let's say modern agriculture. And enriched agroforests make that product's environment, biodiversity, contain no or less pseudohormones, also called xenohormones. Pseudohormones are not sufficiently known and therefore a kind of a hidden threat that negatively affect immunity and our quality of life, also life expectancy. They generate innate immunity of individuals and herd without us even noticing. Agroforests present a richer biodiversity in their environment and around their environment, and that biodiversity reduces the number of pathogens and pathogen vectors in and around their environment of production. But an agroforest does much more than production, because it's also an enriched forest. Like the Amazon forest is a kind of an enriched forest. Agroforests solve climate change, solve the stealth and long-dated accumulated climate and soil destructions. I mentioned climate destruction in the beginning as a rather unknown form and cause of the actual climate change. Agroforest prevents at the root against all our threats and not limited to certain symptoms. Agroforests increase the immunity identity that will lead to less invasions and attacks by pathogens. Immunity identity I will present in these videos, not here in the summary, and it's not very well known. You can think about it as if a pathogen knows that he cannot take a certain cell because it's human and it's well defended and identified, the pathogen will not even go there because it is not efficient for a pathogen to go where he cannot feed himself. These are other subjects that could be that are related, but I won't handle them here at all. So since this is a summary and it's impossible to handle such a complex subject with threats and solutions to these threats, I start to show figures related to threats, solutions in a summarized form. First, the vicious cycle of threats and antimicrobial resistance. The CDC presented this diagram probably in 2020, in the beginning of the actual pandemic, and presents COVID as creating a perfect storm. So COVID is a threat, but plague is a much more severe threat, and you will see that together with COVID, or better, before COVID, the plague threat increased, but it went unnoticed because it's only a matter of cases and not all over the world. And COVID-19 was and is all over the world. So, but there is this vicious cycle, and plague is in it, but it's not mentioned here. Most probably they mention, not here, about serious disease. Well, plague is a very serious disease. It's a vicious cycle, and but I will explain that later, it goes as far as association with suicide that the World Health Organization also warns us about. About what World Health Organization detected. World Health Organization and other organizations detected and responded to antimicrobial resistance in 2010 or even long before. But in this diagram you will only see starting 2010. Fleming, the inventor of antibiotics, warned of resistance shortly after inventing penicillin as an antibiotic, and that was in 1928. World Health Organization held important emergency meetings in 2016 and again in 2019 with extensive reports expressing their worries and sharing and communicating with several other parties, including the industry. At least in this one and in this one, industry was called and involved. World Health Organization alerts for resistance along the food chain. So this is a diagram they produced, World Health Organization. I don't go into detail because this is a summary, but you see that World Health Organization and others detected and responded to threats and antimicrobial resistance. Again, a tripartite antimicrobial resistance meeting initiative in 2021. It's not even in this one, I think. Well, it's again in 2022. But this is all publications online available for the public. What the media detected, I think this is a diagram of Lancet, and again it's warning of the perfect storm or the dual health threat. An infection or epidemic and this threat of resistance. What scientists and research detected is a switch or evolution in the causes of death towards cognitive diseases, Alzheimer, this is Alzheimer and dementia, as the fastest growing causes of death, while the others are going down. So this is affecting our brain, which we consider characteristic for humans. And I will explain that these increasing deaths caused by cognitive diseases or disorders or decline are an alert of a threat of nearing collapse and even risk for collapse and de facto extinction. With de facto extinction, I mean, let's say 7 out of 8 billion people would die or get affected. That's what I mean with a de facto collapse or a de facto extinction. This is United States mortality rate ratio, and this was the situation in 1933, black, grey was 1960, and then there is this in between, this is 1980 and 2000. 2000 is quite recent, and they are still low, not so low as in the middle of the former century, but still only 1.5 times what it was before. 1.5 times the mortality rate in this age group. This age group is 25. This is 15, 25, 35. So I follow this one that presents this peak. Well, it raised by the year 2000 by 50%, and it raised almost a factor 4 just before the pandemic, before the coronavirus 2019 pandemic. So that is very remarkable. So it gives an alert. In fact, you could hypothesize that this curve alerted for something serious, like an epidemic or a pandemic. What I describe in this series is that it didn't warn that much for a viral epidemic. It is warning for the threat that is behind that, and that's a bacterial infection, and that is the re-emerging plague. So these are all related subjects that for now I just show diagrams of, because I cannot handle the many alerts that were detected and detectable, that something was coming. And if we understand what a virus is, I discussed this already in the beginning of this video, it has the potential to prime, to protect a herd against something more serious, like a bacterial infection epidemic. So we will do this more in detail. I will stop this video for now. Thanks a lot for watching. and hope to see you back soon. What we did is bacterial infection must be in focus or even priority, and enriched agroforests should be also so for this reasons or motives, because it solves everything. It doesn't solve the viral epidemic or pandemic, the one we are in and the one that seem to be possible followers up. Most of all, it will handle the bacterial infection that is much more serious and could lead, has the potential to lead us to de facto extinction. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.